We are here from the National Logistics Platform, and today we are going to discuss issues that have affected the industry due to COVID, which means we are talking about the period from March up to today. COVID led to a breakdown of the global supply chain due to several disruptions in inbound and outbound cargo in all the transport modes. The impact of this disruption on transport and generally the logistics will have a ripple effect on key sectors of the economy, such as agriculture and manufacturing, due to the interlinked supply chain. This has led to delays in clearance of cargo at the ports and other points of entry. These delays have affected the industry because shippers have had to carry the burden of the increasing costs of storage, detention, and demurrage accrued on containers. This webinar will provide a public-private dialogue platform to engage on the key challenges encountered by the shippers during the COVID-19 pandemic period, solutions and recommendations, and how to improve the current business environment. During this meeting, we are going to highlight areas like initiatives taken by the Kenya Ports Authority to support the private sector and how to have collaborated with other agencies to facilitate the seamless flow of cargo during this pandemic period. The role of Ministry of Health in terms of facilitating, again, movement of cargo. We'll touch a bit on the maritime laws in Uganda, of course, which have a very little bearing on what we are discussing this afternoon. We'll look at the key initiatives taken by FEAFFA to ensure that there is continuity of operations in the transport and logistics industry in the region during the pandemic period. Key initiatives taken by National Logistics Platform to ensure that there is continuity of operations. In the transport and logistics during the pandemic period. Today I have a team of panelists who are going to discuss these issues. We have Mr. Mohamed Jezan from Kenya Ports Authority, and he's going to tell us what Kenya Ports Authority has done since the coming of the COVID-19. Mohamed Jezan is not new to most of the viewers. He's been here since 2011, handling all sorts of issues that we normally have with KPA and border points, Kenya Railways, Kenya Way Bridges, and the rest. We also have Mr. Barasa from the Ministry of Transport. He's from the Maritime Department. But as I said, we need to separate maritime business with the countries that have shores or are connected to the high seas from the maritime laws that we expect in a landlocked country like Uganda. Again, we shall discuss that in detail so that we get it very clear. There is no mixing of those two issues. Mr. Chobe was supposed to be here from the Ministry of Health. He's not here. And Mr. Rwabogo, they are on their way coming. They should join us in a minute. My name is Charles Kareba. I represent the National Logistics Platform. at the PSFU board. We also expected Dr. Marian Sebunya, but she's not feeling well. She will not be able to join us this afternoon. To kick off our discussion, I think what we need to do is follow it chronologically, the way cargo moves, from the point of where cargo is manufactured to the ports where the sea journey ends. Then from there we shall take on to the land and the other agencies that are connected until the cargo is in Uganda. At this juncture, I would like to ask Mr. Mohamed Jezan from Kenya Ports Authority to highlight a few initiatives they have taken in regard to this important topic since the March when the COVID-19 hit us. Mr. Jezan.
So the first issue was getting the information about the cargo, about the crew and all that. Now, coming further to the point where we're dealing with the cargo and the people is we had to move away now also with payments and sharing of information online. The first one was that people felt was you could not come into the port. And if you did, you needed also to have sanitizers, masks and all that. So the first thing that the port did was to earmark areas where we have sanitizers, profile people and make sure the elderly would work from home. So this had a lot of impact on two things: our online systems and the number of workforce who are ready to give you that service. Now, with any new way of doing things, we had our teething problems and also need to explain and give information to the people. So the first thing that went was that we had a bit fewer people in our offices, but more people serving you because we had now online systems. So most of our people will work from home. They will be given VPN, secure. So all this is supporting the issue of having internet connectivity, wirelesses, Wi-Fi, and then the protection of information through firewalls and virus protections. Now, moving on forward is, I'll talk of the port charges. You could not come and pay to the port even for, let's say, a port pass. Everything had to be done online. You either pay to the bank, you share with us the deposit, or you show us the information that we have it in the banks, and then also the port itself would get confirmations from the bank that Mr. Charles Kareba has paid this amount of money for this bill of lading, and then it would be knocked off. So all that now was done online. So most of the online documentation started to come in. But remember, this was not being done. So we needed a phase whereby we started to train people and explain to people, no, you have to do this. You have to bring in this documentation. So it took time. For example, here in Kampala, people would deposit the money at Stanbic, and they would share with us the deposit slip, the container number, or the bill of lading, and then would explain this, or would share this with Mombasa, would give you a receipt and knock it off. If you have an account with us, credit control would just knock it off for you. If you are a cash client, we would knock it off against that container or bill of lading. And that way, you didn't have to have delays. Though the first few days, it was a problem because people needed to learn it, know how to do it. Now, many people are using online banking and we are having this initiative, they're done well. And we have seen that now people are using and adapting it. The other initiative was, because of these processes, we noticed there were disruptions in terms of turnaround time and delays. So we increased the free days for transit cargo from 9 to 14 days. This was granted on 19th May, and we gave it for 90 days. Considering what was happening with all those challenges we're having and delays along the corridor, it was also added again, extended from 19th August for another 90 days. Sorry to say, it is just elapsed a few days ago, and we are made aware that the industry has put up a request again that we give them another extension. Hopefully, the Ministry of Finance, that is Treasury, will grant and will notify you. But for the time being, we have gone back to the 9 days. However, we still have 30 days at diversion, 20 days for transit exports. The other things that we did was to push for online documentation, where you can do your exit notes, request for SSR or what we call extra port charges online. And this has helped us to move cargo faster. Then you also have the releases for exports and export handing over being done online. Further to this, if you have any queries, our numbers, our WhatsApp numbers, which you already have. We have a group email in Kampala Liaison Office at kpa.co.ke, where people write to us, ask us questions, want to confirm, and we usually answer them. We try to work as much as possible within 24 hours, though we have a shift system where we work and we respond to these inquiries 24 hours. I think those are what we have for now.
Thank you, Mohamed. That was indeed very well put. Of course, nobody expected COVID-19. It hit KPA like it hit everybody else. They had to try to devise means of coping up with the COVID. Ladies and gentlemen, we are lucky that this COVID came when the containers were in place. Some of us who worked in that port before the containers came, it was all labor intensive because everything was done manually. Everything had to be done manually. So you can imagine there will be 3,000-4,000 people in that port. If this COVID had come in that time, it would have been very, very difficult to contain. And of course, people would have died and services would have been disrupted, but we are lucky that it didn't happen at that time. As you realize, indeed, they have gone online on most of their services and their procedures. This requires training. You don't wake up and know how to send money to KP online. As he said, people would go to his office, they direct them to go to a bank, pay, they'll give you a slip, then that is when it is sent to Mombasa and the rest of that. Before all that used to happen at KPA port in Mombasa, there was nothing like you could pay for port charges in Nairobi or elsewhere. But now you can do that. Now you realize that KPA is not the only player in the port. There are other agencies. You have the revenue authorities, KRA, URA, Rwanda Revenue Authority. They are all in that port to clear cargo for their respective countries. And unfortunately, we don't have somebody from URA here and would have heard what they have done and what they could do. But most of the things, like he said, they have also now automated. You can clear a container from your office in Kampala when the container is still in Mombasa. And when it is released to you, it's yours. There's no more question of going to Nakawa and going where. But again, all this, because nobody planned for it, took everybody by surprise, which could definitely cause delays. While we wait for Mr. Rwabogo and Dr. Chobe from the ministry, they're on. Okay. So now maybe I could call upon Dr. Chobe, who is from the Ministry of Health, and Chobe currently is the incident commander for COVID-19 in the Ministry of Health. So you can imagine he has even a military title in the ministry. Well, prior to this, he was a senior public health specialist with the Outbreak and Epidemics Pilot Program at the African Risk Capacity at African Union in Addis Ababa. Of course, he's a medical doctor. So, Dr. Henry Chobe, what can you say that the Ministry of Health has done from the time, of course, we were surprised by the COVID-19 up to today in terms of enabling the fast tracking and seamless movement of cargo vis-a-vis the health of the truck drivers and all the people who are involved in the industry? Mr. Fred Barasa, as I said, he is from the Maritime Department of the Ministry of Transport. You can maybe throw more light to the listeners and the viewers what the ministry has done in terms of this, though, as I said earlier on, we shouldn't mix maritime laws of an inland locked country and those of a country that has a shoreline. Fred Barasa.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman Charles. And like you have clearly stated, Uganda is a land-linked country which does not have direct access to the coastline, whereas this meeting is basically talking about the logistical issues pertaining to shipping. But as Maritime, we have a role in logistics and shipping, though currently we have been more on issues pertaining to safety in our inland water bodies. But as you are aware, Maritime is international by nature, and it deals with transportation of goods and other services across continents and countries through the seas. Now, this nature of transport, just like air transport, is managed through international conventions and standards. For water transport, we have what we call the International Maritime Organization that sets the different standards and conventions that we follow. These conventions are largely categorized into three. We have the safety conventions that deal with things like safety of life at sea, standards for training of seafarers and certification, search and rescue, those standards of safety. We have environmental conventions like maritime pollution, and we have what we call the liability conventions, things that deal with the claims. What can be, for example, a ship can get an accident and maybe causes pollution or wreck in the sea. So there are those three categories of conventions. Uganda has been able to ratify some of these conventions. In 2018, we ratified 9 of them, and we are currently domesticating these conventions through the development of our inland water transport bill. Previously, we have had the legislations, but they were made long time ago. So we are trying to update these laws into one legislation that we have called the Inland Water Transport Bill 2020. So this bill will basically help in terms of safety, those three things that I've mentioned: safety, environmental issues, liability, and also can to some extent help in logistical issues. The meeting here today was the role, the maritime laws present in Uganda, what they cover, and how shippers can use them to their advantage in terms of detention and demurrage. So for purposes of this, what we do, we always interact with other international, national and regional organizations to help in such issues of shipping. Like Mr. Kareba, he's the chairman of Shippers Council. So shippers always come together to raise their issues so that they can be addressed. Most of the laws that we make are for inland water, because you know Uganda, as I said, is land linked. So we use, through these collaborations and our incorporation of these conventions, we are able to interact with other organizations that help in facilitating trade and shipping for our traders within Uganda. One of such organizations, first, like I mentioned, is International Maritime Organization. Through their conventions, like we have the United Convention on the Law of the Sea, which also allows Uganda to operate in the sea. In fact, we are allowed to have also our ships registered under Ugandan flag operating on the sea. So if facilities allow and all processes are done, we can have such facilities so that we can transport our goods easily to our hinterland. We also have the Port Management Association of Eastern and Southern Africa, PAMESA. This PAMESA brings together different port operators, government ministries, logistics and maritime service providers, which can work together to address issues of detention and demurrage. I remember we had a meeting in 2018 that was held in Entebbe to try and bring the different operators together so that we can address some of the maritime transport issues and trade that affect the Ugandans. And I'm sure the issues of COVID are part of the agenda for this organization to try and streamline some of these challenges that literally nobody anticipated. The third one, we have what we call ISCOS, International Intergovernmental Standing Committee on Shipping. Uganda joined this organization in 1967 due to the challenges that Uganda and the East African region as a whole faced during those times. There was unfair treatment of Ugandans and regional shippers by international shipping lines at the time by the way of overpricing of the shipment and compelling countries like Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Zambia to come up with ISCOS at that time, that they can address these issues. ISCOS is still operational up to now. They still have their head office in Mombasa, and they hold the frequent regional meetings to address such issues. So with the COVID pandemic, I think meetings have been held online, and like we are holding this one here, with minimal interaction whereby people meet. But I think is one of the windows that can be used to address this issue of the increasing charges in terms of detention and demurrage. The other one, which is also important, and I think most of the players in this sector are aware of this, the Central Corridor Transit Transport Facilitation Agency. The Central Corridor is a multilateral agency that was established in 2006 by agreements between Republic of Rwanda, DRC, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda. This Central Corridor was formed to facilitate trade among the land-linked countries. Like I said, Uganda is land-linked, so that they can ably move their goods from the coastline into the hinterland. And this is one of the, I think, forums that I think shippers can also use to facilitate trade and also abate these current challenges that we are facing, because some of these shipping companies are now taking advantage by charging people these exorbitant charges in terms of detention and demurrage, because the delays are now because of what is happening, the pandemic, and even our infrastructure, the road networks. You know, we've had these long rains and affected most of our roads, so the delays, some of them are beyond the merchants who import, the traders. The other organization is the Northern Corridor Transit and Transport Coordination Authority. That is between the countries of Burundi, DRC, Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. They are called contracting parties under this arrangement of the Northern Corridor. It helps to coordinate transit transport and logistics across the regional borders within these countries. So as you see, our inland water legislations govern our operations here, but beyond the other countries, you cannot take the laws of Uganda. So we depend on these international conventions and these regional agreements that we have to facilitate trade. And as you know, Uganda depends on the port of Mombasa and the port of Dar es Salaam for the importation and exportation of all products and goods from and into Uganda. So the discussion here, we should look for ways of how we can work with these different organizations to solve these challenges that we have. And I think through the Uganda Shippers Council, we have had a good working relationship with the Ministry of Works and Transport, together with these organizations that I've mentioned. If we can push this forward, I think it will be a good opportunity to address some of the challenges that we have. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Great Barasa. Actually, the Minister of Transport has a big role to play. For instance, when there was the international requirement for the introduction of SOLAS, which came into play, I think, in July last year. SOLAS stands for Save Our Lives at Sea. Where scrupulous traders were under declaring the weight in the containers, and that destabilized the ships, and some of them perished. So there is a requirement now, before you export, your container must be weighed by an authorized company, validated company to do that, and you have a certificate which confirms the weight of the container before you export. Another thing, maybe when we go a little bit back in history, East Coast was formed, as he said, 1967, but was trying to address, we had as East African National Shipping Line. The 4 member states that he mentioned, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Zambia, they had ships on the high seas. The Uganda one was called MV Uganda. The Kenya one was MV Uhuru. The Tanzanian one was MV Ujamaa. And the Zambian one was MV Murungushi. At the time in the 60s when cartels were being formed in Europe so that the shipping lines could dictate prices, and actually that's how the international law came in to stop shipping lines. They cannot have a common stand to determine anything to do with the tariff. They must operate independent of each other to avoid those cartels. So his cause was there to try and address issues that were affecting the ships, those ships that we had. And you can imagine in 1967 we had ships. To enter we have nothing. And these were carrying our cargo from all over the world into Uganda. Then the formation of the Northern Corridor was again to try and help the member states into the fast or seamless transportation of goods from the port to the hinterland being served by those ports, both, and then the one in the Central Corridor in Dar es Salaam, again for the same purpose, to try and facilitate trade in the region. Let me introduce Mr. Businge Rwabogo, the General Manager Operations of Mukwano Group of Companies. He has 2 decades experience in this industry, logistics industry, in the entire region, not just Uganda. He has served on the FEAFFA, the executive has served on the UCFI, he has served on the UMA, all these organizations. So he's a very competent man. Mr. Rwabogo, you're welcome to this meeting, and we are waiting for your input in regard to the theme of the meeting this afternoon, which you are aware of. You're welcome, Mr. Rwabogo.
Thank you for the nice opening remarks and the guidance you are giving the shipping and logistics industry in this country, Uganda. I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, at least I can hear you very clearly.
Oh, that's
We
very
can
good.
hear you.
That's good. On the issue of, as a country as Uganda, and having now been working with manufacturing sector, where we both happen to be importers and exporters, and during this time of COVID, all these 4 issues mentioned have really affected our business, and I would strongly say they're affecting every person in this country who is involved in business. As you may all know, that even if your inputs are got from locally sourced, when you are going to export, you will definitely suffer delays, you will suffer detention, you will suffer storage. The shipping lines that take our cargo normally give you a free export period. Let's say they give you 14 days from the time you pick a container from here up to the time that container is supposed to be on board. Now, with the congestion that we experienced at the crossing points in Malaba with COVID testing and delays of trucks turn around, nobody could staff a container, lift it from here and take it to the port within that given time. I think there is some interference. Now, adding on what Mr. Kareba was saying, because demurrage is to the shipping lines. The officer from the Ministry of Works was saying the shipping lines are charging something exorbitant. I happen to have worked with the shipping line. Most of these containers they use are containers that are also leased. So they also have a lot of other expenses, and they're also in business. So when, as well as we look at our own business, we must look at the other entities. They are also in the same business. Even Kenya Port Authority is doing business. It has people to pay. It has other charges and other expenses to pay. So if you want to use the port as a warehouse, then the port will definitely charge you storage. But now, in event that we had this COVID, which was a pandemic, we believed that all these other bodies, by virtue of natural justice, they should not wait for us to go to them begging. Like they know the port gives us 9 free days. The port should have looked at circumstances and immediately given us maybe 14 or 20 days free to make sure that business flows and we also remain afloat. The same goes to the shipping line, the same goes to transporters. But coming back to ourselves, I think, Mr. Kareba, before you retire, you need to make sure that the associations we have in place, like the Shippers Council, are strong enough and they have the membership. What I have realized during my time of working is people come together when there is a problem, and once the problem is solved, everybody goes to sleep. That is what takes us back. Even Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Transport, at this time, I know we may not have a real maritime law. The one we have for these waters will not have somebody going on international waters. And things like East Coast. When you come here, you'll find Shippers Council is solely on member subscription. And not every importer or business community person is a member of Shippers Council. So they are also not so much empowered to go all the way out to try and speak on behalf of the merchant or importers or exporters. So on the nutshell, all these issues, delays, demurrage, storage, detention, they definitely affect the profitability of anybody in business. And the only way we can handle these issues is to handle them centrally when we are together as an association, a strong association, even if it is under Shippers Council. Now we have the National Logistics Platform that is trying to bring all these bodies together. And I believe Kareba, as a board chair there, you need to work hard and make sure we do enough synthesization and bring all members to board, and the government puts in money in these associations because they are the ones which will facilitate the business community to do their businesses well and to make sure the businesses pay taxes and the government is able to offer services. We appreciate the gesture given to us by Kenya Ports Authority that they gave us 14 days, but this moratorium of 90 days, really, when COVID now has taken 1 year and we don't know when it's going to end, I would ask through the resident rep that he takes back the message that as long as COVID is around, we still need that free period. They should not wait for FEAFFA to go to KPA or for us to go begging. This should remain until COVID is gone. And again, to add, Mr. Kareba, the other thing is that if we are all united together, we can negotiate with the shipping lines and they can listen to us. And you see, the shipping lines are using a method of dividing us. Every time you go, they say, we'll handle case by case. What do they mean? They want to isolate us. So the big ones will get the favor. The small ones will be squeezed. And you know, here in detention or demurrage, they make very big money. It's a lot of money. When you look at it, if I speak on my company, Mukwano, the month of July, we had demurrage bill of about $120,000. Now, for a shipping line to waive that money, you just imagine if it was money coming to my own pocket. I wouldn't do it easily. So I have to put restrictions that I'm giving you 10%. You keep all the time seeking for further waiver. All I can say that this webinar you have organized today, we need to tackle these issues. Now, COVID has opened up our eyes. We can handle a lot of things electronically, and we should engage these bodies more. They also realize that really sometimes it's beyond our control. So, Mr. Kareba, all I can say is that we need to get together and the government needs to support the associations that we have in place that fight for these money-losing ventures. Insurance is not another aspect here, but I know you had worked very hard to make sure that all people importing and exporting out of Uganda insure locally so that this money remains here. I think that's the way forward to go. So we need to make sure that if we had shipping lines as early as 1967, we should see, because really there's no way Uganda is going to sit with shipping lines when you own no ship and you want to give instructions or directives. But if you're a stakeholder, you can arguably argue when you have also a stake in the business. I submit, Chair.
Experience speaks by itself. I'm sure everybody heard you loud and clear. Indeed, as you said, united we stand, divided we are scattered. It is not even a question of falling, we are scattered. Indeed, we need to strengthen the capacities of organizations, but it is not easy, because I can tell you that even PSFU has engaged the government in terms of financing the private sector to be able to achieve its objectives. And where you put it very clearly, if we can achieve our objectives people will earn better, business people will earn better, government will earn more taxes. So in a way, it is like an investment. If they can invest in, with the stakeholders building our capacities to be able to deliver our mandates, the government would be a beneficiary to it. I thank you, Mr. Rwabogo, and I might come back with a question to you later on. The next, I would like to introduce Mr. William Ojonyo. William Ojonyo is with the FEAFFA, an organization we started way back in 1999. He served as a FEAFFA, as a board member. He was a KIFO president, currently managing director and chairman of Panelists group of companies in Kenya. William, you are welcome, and we are waiting to hear your comments on the subject matter of this afternoon. You are welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, moderator. I want to thank you also for the team that put this together. I think this is a classic show of how the private sector is getting more involved in the trade logistics, and in fact, how this then will affect our eventual output as private sector in trade facilitation. So first of all, I want to say that from where I sit as the chairman of the FEAFFA task force on COVID-19, this pandemic came in, if you ask me, without knocking. And that meant that everybody was caught unawares. I must laud the national governments for working 24/7 to ensure safety. And I think then what came first was safety, health safety. What would we do to make sure we are safe? And as that was happening, on the flip side, we were also wondering the essential services must go on. So that is where now trade logistics, which we know is an essential service to consumption, to economy, and more so to livelihood, became another very important plug-in to service providers like public sector, and handling of goods and the period that it takes for the same to be delivered became a big issue. We all know that the pandemic plus high cost of doing business was clearly going to finish an otherwise already very weak citizenry in the region. So what is FEAFFA first? FEAFFA is a federation of associations of East African freight forwarders. We bring together, we house together all associations in East Africa, and we are like a mouthpiece from an EAC level. And what we have done, first of all, is to listen to the heartbeat of each country. I must tell you that I have never seen a huge confusion like I saw post-March, where I want to mention Tanzania had its way of managing this pandemic, Uganda had its way of managing this pandemic, Kenya had its own way, Rwanda, and so on and so forth. And by doing that, they were also clogging what we would have called a status quo. And this status quo meant that we already had made some progress, courtesy of WTO, TFA, courtesy of non-tariff barriers and the interventions that were being made therein, courtesy of the Northern Corridor, courtesy of the Shippers Council, and so on and so forth. So as this progress was going on, bang came the COVID-19, and that clawed back into the gains that had been made, which someone is interfering. Can I go on?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Which brought the cost of doing business higher. I want to mention that although I want to talk about the transit cargo first. The transit cargo was initially given 9 days, but practically with the pandemic coming in, even with 14 days, it was becoming a little difficult to have this cargo, processed and delivered on time. Because remember, the interventions meant that there is no human interaction, there is no physical interaction. The Ministry of Health protocols created what I would call, a new non-tariff barrier, but at the expense of our health, which came first. So what FEAFFA did is to quickly talk to the service providers, from the revenue authorities to Kenya Ports Authority to government organizations and the public sector, on how this mitigation would also include some kind of leverage to allow traders have some soft landing in terms of managing the cost. And I must laud Kenya Ports Authority, I must laud other government agencies, I must laud the effect of sensitization. FEAFFA moved ahead and realizing that most of our members were actually frontliners in this, during this deadly pandemic, we moved in to sensitize. And this sensitization meant that we were becoming our own keepers. We partnered with Trademark East Africa and came up with literature, with protocols, with SOPs on how we would want to manage an otherwise increasing infection within the drivers and the logistics sector. So in a nutshell, much as we were doing this as an association, much as we were doing this as a federation, the expectation from the other side was that we would also get a refresher from the government sector, which I must say today on this platform that came in, but a little too little, because the cost of business continued to go high. We all know that because of the testings, the national management of this pandemic, the queues became longer, the truck turnaround time became longer, cargo dwell time became longer, and the cost of transport more than doubled. So clearly, we are yet to feel the government meet us closer to the losses. But I must congratulate the private sector for pushing harder, and what we can do now is to, like mentioned by Barasa, can we look at our strength of numbers, avoid individual isolation approach, and have a way of approaching government. I am happy that KPA is sitting here, because then we would be asking KPA, what can we do better? The 90 days worked, it was not there yet. The 30 days extra worked, we were not there yet. But what can we do now to make each and every national consumer of KPA enjoy this service, even at the expense of the pandemic? Thank you very much, moderator. I would be happy to have this conclude in a manner that we shall have what I call take homes, which we can now use to move to the next level. I submit.
Very much, William. Well put and well done as the FEAFFA. Indeed, that's why FEAFFA was formed. And when we formed it, that was the time when the East African member states were beginning to negotiate the new East African community after the break of the original one. We wanted to be in place with an organization that is regional by the time the East African states federated. And we thank you that you have definitely kept the role going, and we shall engage you more. It looks like Dr. Chobe will not be available in this discussion, and I would like us to look at maybe what should be the recommendations that we can derive out of this meeting. One thing that has definitely come out very clear is that the pandemic took us by surprise. And the pandemic is not yet over. Initiatives like those put in by KPA on the grace period, the shipping lines, they shouldn't be temporary statements. Maybe they should be like, we extend them until the COVID is deemed to be over, so that it is not a question of every other time you give 30 days and when it expires you go back to I don't want to use the word beg, but to negotiate for further. Now, before we go into those, maybe we could get some questions and answers. Please put up your hand if you want to put up a question, and your name, please mention your name, whom you work for or where you work from, and we shall try to answer the questions as they come in. There was another question, which the person who sent it wanted to know what the industry leadership has done to get waivers from shipping lines and KPA during the COVID time. I think this question was answered by many of the people who were on this panel, starting with the KPA about the original 14 days. Grace period from 9 to 14 days for 90 days, then the extension of that for another 90 days, and now the request to extend the one that has just expired. The shipping lines, they also, when we made them, we had a meeting, by the way, between the National Logistics Platform with the shipping lines and the Minister of Transport, General Katumba, in regard to these issues, mostly regarding the shipping lines. The shipping lines, by international law, they cannot come up with a blanket waiver as all shipping lines. International laws don't allow them to do that. But what they promised us during that meeting was that they were going to handle cases individually. So if you had any problem with the demurrage on the containers, and of course the on the delays, you would contact the shipping lines and they would deal case by case. But like Mr. Rwabogo said, remember, these people are in business. Of course, if they see the big boys who gave them a good business, they will listen to them more than the smaller guys who want 2 containers. And those are the ones that actually need more help than the big boys to continue in business. So we have tried, and we will keep trying to engage those who are concerned with these issues, and we shall keep you updated through the National Logistics Platform and through the individual associations who are members of NLP. Thank you.
What I wanted to contribute is, first, with this COVID, I was seeing on the chat room is the forum for the Consolidators Association. Through Uganda Revenue Authority, they organized all these consolidators. Mr. Kareba, if you remember, I think now they are more organized and they have less issues, because all of them now using the seaway bills and bringing their container up to Kampala to a warehouse and splitting it from here, at least they have been sensitized enough to understand how to do their business together. These associations, like National Logistics Platform, need to take stock of such serious associations. And I believe with the help of government coming in to make sure You know, some associations are formed by individuals just to take forward their own interests. But we know associations which work for the country and which work for the business community. Now, we would need like an apex body like National Logistics Platform to do a census or stock take of all associations that are dealing with import or export and have a connotation on the bearing of what we are talking about. Every time the president talks about reducing the cost of doing business, and you know, freight or transport is a very, very, very big cost. When you read about supply chain management, it is easy to reduce 10% of transport, but it's not easy to increase 10% on the sale of a product and you remain afloat. So if you address all these issues, delays, detentions, demurrage, storage, you can increase your profitability easier than trying to sell a service. Let's say even if you're in clearing, to say, I'm going to increase 50,000 shillings. Customers will run away. But if you address all these delays and bring down these penalties, we make better profitability. So another recommendation I would say that Ministry of Transport is there, and that's where logistics falls. They should do stock and support National Logistics Platform and bring all these associations on board so that we, first of all, we weed out duplication and we make sure we are moving on a clear path to make sure that we have one common voice. And every time we need a person, if he is from consolidators, we can get one person. If it's from Shippers Council, we can get one person. And then these people come to a forum and address these issues and go back and synthesize their members. So all of what I'm saying is we need to align also all the associations that are in existence. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rwabogo. Thank you. That's very clear indeed. And that's why actually the National Logistics Platform was formed to try and put together all the associations that are involved in the logistics industry so that we can speak with one voice and also address these issues collectively. William, you seem to have something to say?
Yes, I wanted to laud what I would call the first steps, because you can only build on the first step to go to the second and third. And I must laud the National Logistics Platform for having taken up what I would call a consolidation of sorts to bring together brains, to bring together players who would then propagate the issues that affect the industry, especially in the logistics sector. Now, I must also say from the EAC position of FEAFFA that Uganda is the first among the equals. And therefore, what we can do is that we want to support the NLP so that then the numbers will count. It is important that now we go into the next stage, which would be survey. You want to survey the impact of COVID-19 post, prior, and have a solution after. And who is best placed to do that? I believe the National Logistics Platform, working very closely with the industry players and the service providers, can come up with numbers that can then help in mitigating not only COVID-19, but should anything else like a pandemic come in the future. So mine was just to re-emphasize that we would want to continue supporting such initiatives, not only in Uganda, but then Uganda becomes the first example for East Africa to emulate. And then that means that if we can have such voices put together, then clearly we shall be solving the issue of delay and tariff barriers, and in fact, reaction to pandemics should anything like that happen. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, William. Indeed, the first step you talked about is the right direction. And it is also important for us to know, as you said, with the figures, what was the impact of COVID from the time it broke out up to now, or maybe up to the end of the year, so that you can realize, because you see, to go and tell somebody that COVID had an impact it does not really come out very clearly and vividly for them to understand the impact. But if you say, as Mr. Rwabogo put it, that the transport costs went up by this margin and we lost so much money because of that, even those who are involved in, laying up the strategies and the policies on the government side would definitely they would understand what you're talking about. As Mr. Rwabogo put it earlier on about insuring cargo, when we were encouraging the importers in the region to insure their cargo locally, there was a survey which was done between 2007 and 2011 on the amount of money we spent on the insurance component of the CIF. And in those 4 years, the region spent $2.98 billion. Imagine that amount of money for the economy of East Africa as a bloc. All that was money that we just exported to Chinese, to Indians, whoever. Don't we need that money here? How about the insurance industry? Doesn't it employ, our citizens? Two, the importers were the biggest losers because you import with the Chinese you don't know. You take a name W-I. You go to China, there are 30 million of Mr. Wee. Which one are you looking for? But if you have insured with the local company and you incur a loss, you go to the local company for them to, and you file your claim for recovery. So these are some of the things, as you said, that we need to do. Now, that impact, the survey on impact is very necessary, and I'm sure NLP is going to take it up, and we can contact some of our partners in terms of who can finance it for it to happen, because as you said, it should be regional. It's not just Uganda. The whole region, we should be able to assess what was the impact.
Maybe there is a question. Mr. Jezan, can I read it? Thank you, Chairman. Here is a question to Mr. Jezan from Andrew Naseve. They say they appreciate the reconsideration of KPA for reinstating the 14 days. However, they want to get more clarity on the timelines. When do you think this is going to happen?
Okay, thank you very much, Nicholas. We are not sure for now because there are several issues that you're looking into. Where are the delays being festered? Okay? Which component of the logistics chain is a problem? We can, as we have said, we cannot go having indefinite extensions for the rest of the time while we are trying very hard to improve. We need to work as a teamwork. So as far as I'm concerned, the latest information I have is that we expect feedback by this Friday in our stakeholders meeting in Mombasa. We have a stakeholders meeting every Friday, and according to that matrix that we have shared across between all our stakeholders, is that on the 27th of this month, probably we have feedback from Treasury. Hopefully we do get it. If not, we'll be given a status as whether they're still pursuing it or they're waiting for feedback from the Treasury. Now, not that withstanding, apart from the 14 days, we still also have web applications being submitted by our clients. And this is done online, and we ask our clients to submit all documentary evidence and supporting documents. This is apart from the 14 days that you've been accorded. We have situations whereby, for example, if Mulago Hospital has important medical supplies that need to come, and they're very unique in terms of important cargo. It's not like you're importing a car. These are very required items. We grant waivers on the storage, not on the handling, but on the storage. We understand storage is not part of our business. It's not our core revenue. We do have issues on that we have to pay for electricity, security, and all that, but it's not major a component. So we'll give a percentage of the storage, and we usually validate it for 3 times. Yeah? If you do not have time to remove the consignment because of the same problems that you are facing right now. We have done it before, but we would like to see people working as a team. Part of these delays is we are not working together. For example, you might be importing your consignment, yet you don't know what is required by law in terms of compliance to the national body on standards. Or you don't even know when you're supposed to submit your items. So it all depends with them. This thing that we are doing here together, we have to work together. It's all about technology. We need to do due diligence on our part. We have to be proactive, and we need to do a lot of resolution of issues as a team. You can't keep on pointing fingers, but we need to help each other so that we can work together to make the logistics chain faster. As Mr. Rwabogo has said, you cannot increase the price, but you can work on the efficiencies to reduce the delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jezan. And also, maybe you can look at the surveys that have been done before on the cost of transportation alone. The logistics industry accounts for between 35 and 45% of the total cost of importing a container from wherever up to Kampala. Now, the other survey that today was done about the same. The sub-Saharan average cost should be 18%, but not 35 and 45. So we need to work hard to come down to 18% like the other sub-Saharan countries. Any more?
Maybe this one going to Mr. Fred Barasa from Paul Minoro. We heard about the plans of URC revamping the use of rail track between Toro and Kampala.
Thank you very much. I think these are some of the plans that are being done by URC in collaboration with the Ministry of Works. Mostly, I think I've been hearing more of the SGR, external gauge, but also plans to revamp the meter gauge, so that can be operational. Because when you look at the western side, most of the rails were uprooted, but we still have the one on the eastern side. It just requires more maintenance, and depending on the availability of resources, I think is a priority area.
Thank you. Maybe to add on to that one, Tanzania Railways came up with a similar plan to upgrade the meter gauge railway from Dar es Salaam to Mwanza. So in the upgrading, they increased the size of the rails so that more cargo can be carried and at a faster speed. So a locomotive should be able to pull 30 wagons instead of 20 and reduce the 2 days that used to take from Dar es Salaam to Mwanza, which would be very useful for Uganda cargo, because if you can use rail and use water, put it on the wagon ferries across Lake Victoria, which takes about 17 hours, the following day, in about 3 days, your cargo would be in Kampala. And rail and water transport are the cheapest means of transport. So if you can have that, I'm sure that would also reduce on costs. Yes. And maybe what I could request Fred to do for us, when they are rehabilitating those rails that were disbanded, they should also think of increasing the capacity, not just replacing the rails that were there, carrying 20 wagons and at the speed of that time, but really replan it to give you better results. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Charles. And I think if maybe some of them have been keen, you would have seen that now the rail line to Port Bay is now operational, and we have MV Kawa, the wagon ferry that carries cargo from the Ugandan side to Kisumu and Mwanza. It was rehabilitated and is now full operation. Also have MV Uhuru carrying from the Kenyan side and delivering cargo, not the rails. They're able to go and get loaded on the ferry and be transported at the other side and then connect the rail line the other side to deliver. So currently those two ferries are working, MV Kawa and MV Uhuru from Kenya. So that line is already now open and operational. On issues of capacity, that requires more investment, and I think that's what we are working on, to ensure that more investment is done in this sector, that they can carry more and also move much more faster than currently being done.
How about MV Umoja from Mwanza, the Tanzanian one?
Yes, and MV Umoja also is also operational.
It's operational.
So those three ferries are operational.
And of course you have realized that we are now carrying a lot of oil,
Yes.
On the waters than on the road, from Kisumu to Port Bay. And of course that will even get better when the Bukasa port is complete. The project is ongoing, but if it is complete, to be a bigger facility, bigger handling facilities, and more enabling in terms of using the waterways on Lake Victoria.
Maybe just to add, there is also another private investor called Mahathi. It's in Kauku. They are building tanks and then barges. They have built tanks which can store up to 70 million liters of fuel. And they are planning to build the ships, the barges that can carry up to 4.4 million liters of fuel each. They intend to build 4. They have started on the first 2. So these vessels are able to move from Mahathi in Kauku in Entebbe and to connect the lines in Kisumu. They will be basically carrying fuel. So the line in Kisumu is ready, just waiting for our side this way. So once this is done, to reduce a lot of strain on our roads, that fuel can be transported through these lines. And as you are aware, with our discovery of oil, it can also do reverse. We can also carry our fuel in case we are done to transport to the other side. So it's a big development that the shippers should take note of. As you are aware, in Uganda, I think we use an average of 6 million liters per day. So with this kind of capacity, we should be able to have enough fuel and also even support our neighboring countries to transport through this facility.
Thank you. Maybe we have also heard that the Minister of Transport wants to work on roads that connect to DRC. Maybe you could comment something on that, Fred.
That is now in mostly in roads section.
What's that kind of thing?
Yeah,
because what they were
I
saying
think,
was that we need to tap the market.
yes.
DRC, for those who know the geography well, the Eastern Congo is completely cut off from Western Congo because geographically the River Congo Basin is such a big forest, so transport is a problem mostly by road. During the rainy season, the roads are not there. So Eastern Congo depends on Indian Ocean. So why can't we take advantage, bring whatever they want to buy, they buy from Uganda, instead of them passing us and go to buy from Kenya and elsewhere. So we can take advantage of those. And also when you look at the master plan of the standard gauge, where the arm that was supposed to go through Guru, then Arua, it was supposed to go into Congo and come down and eventually end up at Bukavu, so that it was a loop when one of the central corridors would go through Rwanda up to Bukavu. So all these are things in place, and we hope that they come into can be implemented when some of us are still alive.
There was a question here, but Fred has responded to it. Does the Mwanza rail carry badges? Yes,
Yes.
Yes, I responded to that one. Then there is one to Mr. Jezan. Why does KPA take long to process applications for port pass and account research?
Thank you for that question. Currently, what you are doing during this COVID period, for port passes, for renewing, it is easier because you have the information about you and your organization. For new port passes, we're having a problem because of the vetting process. So there has been a policy. We've been trying to engage our team in Mombasa to be assisting. And on the password reset, this is something that we are trying to tell our clients to do it on your own. We have invested in our IT system whereby the password reset is done by yourself. There's a tab on the screen where you always do self-reset yourself. I have tried it myself, I've tried it with other clients, it keeps on working. We have had situations whereby we have done that, but sometimes at the point of where you have done the password reset and the email that you submitted in your registration, at that point of time, and the time that what you're doing right now, you find that there could be two different email addresses. So you need to understand what was the email that you had sent. In case of any problem, KPA will be sending that information to. You'll find that that information is not a company email. It belongs to a person. It's not like, for example, Kampala liaison office at kpa.co.k. It is maybe mjezan@gmail. It needs to be a domain-based email, one. Secondly, it has to be belonging to the company, probably financial controller at so-and-so. When that person moves away and that email is either removed from the system, we cannot send you the new password. So just check with that. We can follow up with you on a personal level and to find where the problem is, and we can get you sorted.
Well, thank you, Jezan. It's unfortunate the Minister of Health hasn't been here because some of the delays that we encountered during the peak period of the COVID in April into May, those lines of trucks at the borders. Again, as we said, even the Minister of Health, they did not expect COVID. They were not prepared. So it had to be to take a toll. But now we need to engage here. You're looking at KPA, you are looking at shipping lines, you are looking at the Ministry of Health to try and find solutions. Since now we have been with the COVID since March, we are now going to December. We are now getting used to living with it, and they should also be getting used to finding solutions to avoid these delays. Because as we said, these costs go up. When they go up, eventually it is you and me and your uncle in the village who pays the price. All this eventually ends up on the end consumer, who is you and me. So we might be thinking that you talk about something foreign, it has nothing to do with you. Maybe the shirt you are buying 29, if it is 25. Those are the effects of these things we have been talking about. The Secretariat has been noting what we have discussed. We are going to come up with the issues that we need to follow up, and we shall follow them up as we have been doing. But another thing that has come up here was from William, the survey on the impact of COVID on the logistics industry in the region. Otherwise, I would like to thank the panelists. Mr. Businge Rwabogo, thank you very much for your time. Mr. William Ojonyo, please, if you ask Baruch, we can give you my email. I would love to continue engaging you. Thank you very much for your input. I thank Fred Barasa. Thank you for representing the ministry, and we appreciate our relationship with the ministry. KPA, we have always been with you. I can tell you that when KPA was born, I was in the port of Mombasa. I was working that port when KPA was born. So I know what they go through and what. And the media, we'd like to thank the media for a job well done. We look forward to engaging you more for the betterment of our concluding remarks from all partners. Panelists. All right. I thought I would summarize it for them. Because you see, the subject is one. We're all discussing one thing. It's delays. So we are going to repeat each other using different words. I would rather that we continue the way we have done it so that we finalize. You must remember we're also in business, we want to go and do some work. So we thank you, and we look forward for another session of a similar nature, maybe on other issues that are affecting the logistics industry. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, media.